to your seats. Sorry to sound like a school principal, but Tony Fitzgerald has been teaching me over the last few years. For those who don't know me, my name's John Adam. I'm the managing partner of Marsdens. And firstly, I'd like to acknowledge the traditional custodians of the land, the Dharawal people. We also respectfully acknowledge elders past and present for the role they continue to play in guiding future generations. And secondly, I'd like to welcome everybody here tonight and also thank you for coming along and helping us celebrate our 50th years in legal practice. It's a good milestone. It's a good milestone, and then mixing with the people outside, it's amazing how many friends are here tonight to help us celebrate this occasion. A lot of you would be surprised that I'm up here and not Jim. You know how Jim likes an audience and a microphone, and whenever that occurs, Jim is normally up here talking. But when we talked about it, it was difficult for him, who's going to give a speech later, to actually introduce himself. So even he thought it was a bit inappropriate for him to be the MC and the keynote speaker. So he asked me, would I do it? And I said I would, but I'd do it on one condition, that you don't tell me how to do the job. And he agreed. That was okay. So I heard nothing for a couple of months. He went away to Croatia in September, got back on the 7th of October. 10th of October I received an email. Addo, I was thinking about our 50th dinner and I want to make sure everyone enjoys themselves. You know how you go on and on at partners meetings? Well, I don't want you to do that on the night. The night isn't about you, it's about the firm. So please keep it short, as brief as possible. So thanks Jim, I thought, okay, he won't give me much more until the 16th of October. I was doing a little prep for our 50th dinner over the weekend, and I reflected on the type of event it should be. You know how often you try to be funny, and often you're not that funny. So as there will be a lot of important people there, including the Premier, could you simply try not to ham it up? So I didn't reply to that one. I said, okay, see how he goes. 22nd of October, 2 weeks ago, my birthday. Addo, just another thing re our 50th. I know you like to take the mickey out of me when you speak. Well, the 50th is not that type of night. It should be a dignified night, so you can just leave me alone. Thanks. So I didn't reply to any of those 3 emails, but I will now. So firstly, my speech will be shorter than yours, Jim, for sure. Secondly, I will be a lot funnier than you will be. And thirdly, under no circumstances will I ever take the mickey out of you. It's not the way I do things. I don't know whether anyone has ever seen Jim's big ears, but anyway, that's a little thing. Now, there's one important person that can't be here tonight, and that person is John Marsden. It's now 12 and a half years since John died, and we couldn't celebrate our 50th year without acknowledging John's contribution. Just give a really small snapshot of the history. In 1968, John opened the office on the corner of Queen and Demerrick Street. He shared the space with Roy Warby's dad Les in the bakery. John was 26 years of age. He was a one-man show. Today, 50 years later, we're still on the corner of Queen and Demerrick Street. Slightly bigger, 67 lawyers, over 160 staff. Campbelltown, though, is still our head office, even though we have offices in Sydney and Liverpool, Oran Park and Camden. Campbelltown is still our head office, where we started. The truth is, we wouldn't be here tonight and where we are today without John. John was a lot of things. How do you describe him? I wrote down some words, but these are only a few, and they're the clean ones. He was smart, he was talented, enthusiastic, but he was also opinionated. He was outlandish. He was dynamic. Maybe that's about it, as I wrote it down, because I see that there's a number of people that are nodding their head at those. And he wasn't everyone's cup of tea. He was quite unique. But he had an incredible couple of philosophies and attitudes. Firstly, his attitude was that no problem couldn't be fixed without hard work. If you worked hard, you could fix anything. And he practiced exactly what he preached. He was a 24/7 solicitor. And he always led by example. He never expected anybody else to do more than him. And he had a simple philosophy. You know, we all go through our lives wondering how to make a successful business. Well, John had it nailed back in 1968. You look after every client as if that client is your only client. You serve your client. He used to say, service, service, service. That's what makes a business successful. Now, he used to try and instill this into our staff. And we used to have what we would call the infamous Monday morning meeting, 7 a.m. Monday morning. Now, John had a habit of repeating himself. He never in his life said 7 a.m. Monday morning. He would say 7 a.m. in the morning, Monday morning, always. But we had this 7 a.m. meeting where we would reflect on our performances in the previous week. We would plan our next week. And then John would deliver a monologue of the things we weren't doing right or we didn't do right that week. Now, they had a number of names, those things. They were the Friday notes, but they eventually became known as the little jewels of wisdom. And I thought that just to give you an insight into John's mentoring, I would read out a couple of the little jewels of wisdom. Now, certainly they weren't from a management book, and they didn't use management talk. They used Marsden speak. So here's a couple. Writing long, complicated, drawn-out letters doesn't resolve matters. Clients want immediate action. They want things resolved immediately, today, not tomorrow. The way to do it is to get on that telephone and make it ring-a-ling, ding-a-ling and bing-a-ling until you get the result. It seems to me that you people have to learn to do that and do it fast as you possibly can. Now, that ring-a-ling, ding-a-ling and bing-a-ling was used 1,000 times with our staff. But guess what? Not a bad message. Next one. If there's a phone in the interview room and it rings while you're in there, for God's sake, lift the bloody thing up. Another one. One of the reasons I was successful in establishing this office was because I had a real sense of urgency. Everything had to be done yesterday. It can't wait, can't wait. It can never wait. It must be done yesterday. That sense of urgency in some areas seems to have dropped off. In some branch offices, they don't even know how to spell the word. In some places, they don't even understand the word. If we want to work to pick up, then you'd better get off your ass and get your sense of urgency back, and get it back bloody fast. Each and every one of you, what you can do today, you could have done yesterday. Let's get that sense of urgency back. Only a couple more. I again reiterate the need to make your letters more personal, more human, less legal and different from the old-fashioned way of solicitors who think their shit doesn't stink. And then the last one, I have been through 2 more sets of file checks where we do cross-checking of each other's work. I want people to be proactive. Be proactive. Hear that? Be proactive. You ring. You make the first call. That's how we built up this practice, and it has dropped off. I don't know why. I don't know why you people don't do it. I don't know why you don't listen to me. It drives me crazy. You've just got to do it. Be proactive, 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 proactive. And you've got to ring up first. If you won't, someone else will. And we had hundreds. We have this best of the little jewels, and they go for hundreds. And they're not all the same type of tenor. But that's the way John used to run the practice. But you know what? It's not a bad way. It's a pretty good message to give young lawyers that if you want to get the job done, do it. Do it now. Do it right. Do it fast. Don't put it off. Look after your clients. And that's the legacy of John Marsden. He's taught all our partners, all the lawyers whilst he was in control, and we've continued that to make sure that the client comes first and that service is paramount. But John didn't do it by himself. And he was helped by many people, and a lot of them are here tonight. John Fay, who can't be here, but we will hear a little bit from him later, and Rod Smith were in the 70s with him, and eventually Rod became a partner. And in fact, the firm was named Marsden, Smith and Associates. Excuse me. When I started in 1980, that was the firm's name. Rod had just left, and Rod's here tonight. I think where's Rod? Hand up, Rod. Somewhere. Welcome, Rod, and it's great to have you here. And then in the 80s and 90s, there were basically the five amigos. There was John and Jim, myself, Kenny Searle and Drew Percival. And we ran the practice throughout the 80s and 90s and probably laid the foundations for what we have today. Ken sadly passed away last year unexpectedly and suddenly. Tonight, a pleasure to have Matt and Gemma and Timmy. Timmy, we saw it before. Well done, and you're representing your dad proudly, and we love to have you. You're always welcome. And Drew's here. Drew left us a couple of years ago, but Drew's always welcome back, and it's great to see you, and I hope you have a really great time. And fast forward to now. We have 14 partners, and in many cases, not all of you would know who the partners are, because you might only do commercial law, property law, environmental law, or some other area of law. So I thought, without having too much of a fanfare, I'd get the partners to stand up when I call them, just so you can have a look at the current partners of Marsden. So we'll start with Rahul in commercial. Unfortunately, Justin Thornton is not here tonight because he's undergoing some of his own medical treatment and he's in a pretty bad way. But Rahul Uckman is at the back there, is a partner of our commercial section. Peter Crittenden and Ben Wong in our property. Peter and Ben, if you could stand up and wave to people. Dom Mosca at Liverpool. Dom had to be given 7 emails to teach him how to stand up and not sit down, but he said to me he's got it under control. Tom Reeve and Naveen Youssef in family law. Thanks, Tom and Naveen. Joe Benura in personal injury. Adam Seaton and David Baird in local government and environment. Grant Butterfield and Aaron Johnson in dispute resolution. That's litigation where you don't want to go, but if you get there, you want these guys in your corner. And lastly, but not leastly, Jim Marsden, senior partner. We're close. Not bad. I like it. Can we have you? We'll swap trading places. Tony Perrich and Jim Marsden. So these partners, thanks guys, you can sit down now. These partners and hundreds of employees over the years have made us what we are today. And we're really proud of what we've achieved. There is no other firm in Australia that started in a regional area with their head office still in a regional area that is as big as us. We are the biggest firm with that criteria in the country. And for that, we are extremely proud. And there's one other reason for that growth, and it's probably the main reason. And it's not us with our genius management or our brilliant legal ability. The main thing that's made us successful is you, our clients. We respect that. We ensure that we will live up to the expectations that you have on us, and we will never take the relationships we have with you for granted. That is paramount, that is a given, and every one of our partners and every one of our staff understands that. At all times, the clients come first. Remember what John said, you look after your client as if it's your only client. So that's the culture that we've got. That's what I'm sure is the formula that's made us successful, and we will continue delivering that type of service for the remainder of our existence. When we were preparing tonight, we were disappointed that we didn't have enough memorabilia of our history. It would have been fantastic now to throw over to a video of John Marsden addressing this crowd, and we never did that. So for tonight, we decided to put together a short video of the partnership as it is today, and hopefully that video can be passed down through the ages for the history of Marsdens for future generations of Marsdenites. So I think we're ready to have a short video.
You know, John and I were like chalk and cheese, and I actually had no thought at all of joining the firm. But then an approach was made by two of his associates, John Fay and Rod Smith. And I started to think about it. They came and saw me a couple of times, and I thought about the fact that I was born and raised in the area, in Campbelltown, Macarthur, Southwest, and it'd be a great thing for me to help John with his vision of establishing a significant practice in the area. And eventually, with a little bit of help from my dad, I decided to do it. In fact, my dad probably sealed the deal. He said that in his view, there'd be nothing better for him than to have his two sons in partnership in Campbelltown.
So as you can see, it's very fortunate that we are good lawyers, because we will certainly not make good movie stars. Enjoy your entree. We'll be back again.
Hello, I'm Peter Brennan. I'm thrilled and honoured to make a few comments on this fantastic occasion of 50 years of Marsden's Law Group. My association with Marsden's Law Group spans over 30 years, and I was only reflecting on that this afternoon. First, I don't know how it could be 30 years, but what started as a pretty straightforward professional services relationship has developed into an enormously important range of friendships, an incredibly valuable source of advice for my company and for me personally. So on these 50 years, all we can say is congratulations, we celebrate with you, and we wish you the best for the next 50 years.
Hello, Arnold Vitocco is my name. It's a pleasure to be here today to celebrate Marsden's 50th anniversary. Our family has been with the Marsdens for 1990ish to now, so some 25-30 years. For me, it's about the service they give and the family atmosphere, the way they treat their clients. On behalf of Irene, my wife and my boys, we wish you all the success and many more years to come. Thank you very much for having us here this evening.
Look, it's Marsden's pleasure to introduce our first speaker, the Premier of New South Wales, the Honourable Gladys Berejiklian. 25 years ago we had our 25th anniversary. We held it at Parliament House, and the speaker on that occasion was the then Premier John Fay. That Marsdens have always been involved politically. It probably dated back from when John stood for Parliament in the 60s. He didn't make it, fortunately for us, and then he devoted himself to law, and this is the result of that endeavour. But throughout the years, we've always had good relationships with our local members, and it's great to see former members, Michael Knight and Craig Knowles, here tonight. And I see Maurice Yemmer here, not a local member, but now a local cricket tragic for the Macarthur region, so welcome to Maurice. And we have current members, local members here of Paddo, Chris Patterson and Michael Freelander and Chris Hayes, and Stanley, Shane Mallard, Anilak Chantivong, and also just arrived. Stuart Ayres was here earlier, but Maurice Payne just flew in this afternoon. Plane was delayed, yet she still hightailed it out to Campbelltown as soon as she could, and she just arrived, and we really appreciate the effort. And not to be mean, but not mentioning all names, there's numerous mayors, former mayors and councillors here tonight. And it's not because we just want to big note ourselves, it's because with each of you we've formed a relationship over years, and that relationship has benefited both sides. We've been able to give you our opinion on what are the issues of the day. We're also able to give you the opinions of our clients. We're able to tell you what they're thinking and what they're wanting. And I know that that's been used by our local people to feed back to government, to be able to develop land, to build schools, and to basically do, well, in Michael's case, to build hospitals. And it's just been a very good relationship, and we've been lucky to be involved in the political sphere for many years. We think that our involvement has helped, and it's because of the relationship with politicians generally that we do like to be able to showcase a speaker at these events. And when Jim asked the Premier, would you like to attend? And the Premier said yes. And then Jim said, would you be prepared to say a few words? And she again said yes. And we were delighted. So it was with great pride that I asked the Premier of New South Wales, the Honourable Gladys Berejiklian, to come to the stage and say a few words.
Good evening, everybody. Thank you so much for that very generous and warm introduction. It is my honour and my privilege to be here this evening, because Marsdens represents not just 50 years of phenomenal client and customer service, of a family business thriving in this part of Sydney, but those values of giving back to the community which have tonight resulted in the MacArthur royalty being in this room today. Everybody who knows and respects and loves this region is in this room, because everybody knows and respects the legacy that Marsdens continues to grow in this region. And it's no mistake that my state and federal parliamentary colleagues of current and former of all persuasions are here tonight, because we have the honour and privilege of supporting those who support good, strong community values. And in particular, I want to acknowledge, of course, the former Premier Maurice Yema, but also want to say, with all due respect to him, that I think it's quite convenient that Marsdens always has their milestones when there's a Liberal Premier. So John Fahey, 25 years ago, me tonight. So I think it's an interesting coincidence. But I also want to stress that it's not every day that the Foreign Affairs Minister of Australia gets off a plane from China and makes the effort to be here. And if that doesn't demonstrate how much we love and respect what the Marsdens Groups represents, I don't know what does. And we all know that the firm was established obviously in 1968. It was a one-person firm in John Marsden, and it was joined by the wonderful Jim Marsden at the urging, I understand, of their father, but also of John Fahey. And 50 years on, that what was then a small family business is employing 180 or so employees and growing. And that is a proud achievement. Not very many businesses survive a few years, let alone carry the legacy of half a century. And as the firm has grown, so have the prospects of this region, and so have the hopes and aspirations of a population here. And what is also very interesting and pleasing about this firm is that it's one of the few law firms that have actually grown organically. They've not acquired other firms. They've actually built up their culture, built up their clients, built up their business. And it's a rare example of independence, it's a rare example of value, and it's a rare example of resilience and longevity. And this isn't just a tribute to John and Jim Marsden and their legacy, but also to their families, their staff, and every client that's had the confidence to deal with them in this half century. And John Marsden, I understand, famously said, and many of you would have heard him say this, there are two great cities in the world, Rome and Campbelltown. But that deserves a round of applause. But these weren't just words. Marsdens have actually backed this with action. And I'm so proud that in the last half century there have been so many charities and community organisations that have benefited from the generosity. Whether it's charities from Lifeline to White Ribbon, Rotary clubs, healthcare providers, medical research centres, chambers of commerce, sports clubs, historic and legal societies. And one of the many organisations Marsdens work with is the Mater Dei School for Children and Young People with Intellectual Disabilities. And in the words of the principal of Mater Dei, Tony Fitzgerald, Marsdens is, and I quote, so much more than a law firm. It's been significantly influential in the development of Campbelltown and the region and contributed to the current fabric of a very generous MacArthur community. And both John and Jim Marsden have rightly been recognised with Australian honours, and it's typical of Jim, and for those who know him, he's a modest, very modest, humble individual who accepted his OAM not just on his behalf, but on behalf of everyone at his firm, which tells you about the generosity of the man. But South West Sydney has transformed as the firm has grown, and I know that this region's best years are ahead of it, as are Marsden's. And that's because we proudly support this region in every way we can, and I'm sure many of you who've grown up, lived and worked here appreciate the opportunities that exist into the future. And I'm very proud for the state government to be part of that process. And our vision, communally, all of us who care about this region, is to offer our citizens the best quality of life, the best opportunities, and I believe that exists here in bucket loads. And in no small part is because of its people. People like the Marsdens who care and cared so passionately, not just about growing their businesses, but by strengthening the community of which they are such an integral part. And I'm confident that this firm and the people that support it and their attitude and values will continue to play a critical role in shaping the wonderful future of this region. And on behalf of all of us here, Jim, to you, your family, to your staff, congratulations on an exceptional 50 years. We're all proud to be here to support you. And we know that if every business in the state had your values about giving back to the community, the strength of us would be unparalleled. Congratulations. Here's to the next 50, and we're all incredibly proud to be here on this special occasion.
Thank you, Premier. I really want to work for a joint like that. That's exactly the type of place I'd like to be. John always said, and the Premier used those words, you give back to the community that supports you. And in a number of ways, nearly every one of our staff are involved in some aspect of service clubs or community giving. When I was offered a partnership, it was made on one condition, that I move out to Campbelltown. John said, if you're going to work in Campbelltown and take money from people in Campbelltown, you live in Campbelltown, you buy your bread from the people in Campbelltown, you buy your meat from the people in Campbelltown. So I listened to him, and that's why my butcher, Lenny Marketson's here tonight. Thank you, Lenny. Been a great supplier of the best meat in the history of the world. But that's what the philosophy of John was, and the philosophy of Marsden's. We do give back to the community, and we don't do it to get work. You know what? We do it because we really mean it, and we want to make a difference. And in many cases we do, and Mater Dei that the Premier has mentioned is one of my passions, and it's just a fantastic institution.
Marsdens has a very significant part in my career. It was the first conference I ever had as a barrister, and I made sure it was the last conference I ever had as a barrister to give me that great symmetry. The first conference, though, was with John Marsden as the client, which obviously enough wasn't something which was the easiest experience in the world. I feel a great loyalty to Marsdens. Marsdens was the first firm that briefed me in the Supreme Court doing a matter by myself. The first time I was in the Court of Appeal by myself, I was briefed by Marsdens. The first time I was in the High Court, I was briefed by Marsdens. I've got great memories of my time doing work for Marsdens, the people that I've met, a number of people who I regard as very good friends. The professionalism, the excellence of the firm, the eclecticism of the work, the quality of the clients, it's something to be extraordinarily proud of. I am so thrilled to be here for the 50th anniversary, and I wish the firm a very happy 50 years moving forward in the future. Thank you.
But the next speaker needs very little introduction. I'll go back to 1969, a Croatian migrant named Colombo Peric wanted a law firm to buy a small piece of land in Leppington. Used John Marsden. John Marsden gave that service that I talked about before. So Ms. Colombo wanted to buy another piece of land, so he came back and used John Marsden again. And he did it again, and he did it again, and he did it again. And then over the years, Colombo had a couple of boys, Tony and Ron. And then they went into the business. And then they started running the business. And with Kathy and Lynn, they grew the business. And the business continues to grow. And they continue to use Marsdens. And then the next generation are in the business, and the next generation are being prepared. And the business continues to grow and grow and grow. So we started back in 1969, we think, around about that, maybe even 68. And 49 years later, the Peric Group has grown, as too have Marsdens. We've grown up together. So it's my pleasure to ask the poor simple farmer himself and a really good friend of Marsden's, Tony Peric, to say a few words.
You know what, sometimes when they forget that we're a poor simple farmer, it hurts, but thank you. I'm going to be a little bit different, and it's going to be, we're going to start from the growth and to where we finished. I was going to welcome everyone, but there's too many, so I just welcome the Premier and everyone around her, because it's too many to do. But on behalf of the Peric Group, I'd like to congratulate Marsden's Law Group for achieving 50 years. That is something extraordinary. The reflection and the professional service you have provided our family and the community over these years. Marsden Law Group have been our lawyers for many, many years, and when it was a one-man operation run by the late John Marsden, the large firm it is now, it's been a pleasure and honour to be part of the journey. So I'm going to go start with the journey. How we started. My father was a very wise man. He actually, when I was dealing with money and the banks, he always seemed to find money to buy land. And he said, you've got to keep buying land because they're not making enough of it. And we started with Marsden because we used to had a lawyer in Sydney. Father said, geez, it's too far to go down there. And Marsden started to practice in Campbelltown, and my father said, no. Well, I was born in Leppington, and so Liverpool I went to school with, and he said, oh, we've got to be in Liverpool. Oh, I'll open an office in Liverpool. And that's how it started. I think it was roughly about 12 months after he started and Marsden said to my father, he said, I'm going to be cheaper than Sydney, and I'm going to give you better service. And he certainly did. He started with two partners, John Fay and Rod Smith. Jim come along, he's still there, the others are not. Then I come across to Addo, John Adam, we call him Adam. And as the firm was growing, it gets too big. And the partner said we need to get a general manager. I remember John talking to me, he said, what do you think of the idea? I said, that's pretty good in no bloody way, am I going to tell anyone? No one's going to tell me what to do. I said, John, you've got to listen, you know. I mean, fancy me saying that because I'm worse than he was. But Ado, you did come in there and it was tough. And I know you got abused. And I've got abused more than once by John too, so, you know, I know what it was like. But he was a great man. Let's talk about John a little bit. He was president of the Royal Society, and we always talked together, and he'd say, I got this job. I said, you've got to be kidding me. What would you want to do that for? You know, you've got enough to do to looking after us without anyone else. We used to send everyone to him because we thought he did a good job. But he always asked you to do something. So he said to me, Tony, he said, I want you to come down to Mollybrook. Where the heck's Mollybrook? It's down there somewhere. They have these seminars. And I want you to teach our young lawyers the difference between a poor, simple farmer and someone who's got a lot of money. Okay, so I went down there, and Kathy was very good. She dressed me up in a suit and tie, and I hate ties, and you know, got the hair right, a bit of makeup. I was like a movie star. So I was sitting there, and they were looking at me, who the heck's this bloody bloke? And then I started to strip. And John was panicking. I thought I was going to think, no, he's only going to go down to his underpants. But he's got to be talking to these people. There's a whole room of people. And so I got down underneath. It was me shorts, my green shirt. Underneath I had my little terry towel, and I had to put it on there. And I said to all the young lawyers out there, so that's the difference. Don't look at a bloke the way he's dressed. Treat everyone equal. And that was John's belief, that you should teach everyone has a chance to be a lawyer or a solicitor or something. No matter what it is, just treat everyone equal. John was very particular on that. I didn't agree with a lot of things that John did. And we had a few arguments. I remember once I went in there, there's always a problem with government bodies. And I went in there and said, John, I want this done. He said, it's impossible. I won't go into the detail because it's pretty complex. And he says, it's not possible. I went off the brain. I said, you don't know what you're talking about. This is what you're supposed to fix things for me. So I went out in a huff. By the time I got home, he already rang Kathy. He said, I've got a deal. I didn't find out later that actually Jim was the one who figured it out. But he took all the credit, so that was John's all the way. You've got to understand, John was a very honest person, but he stretched the truth a lot, we all know that. John, charity work. He did enormous charity work. The firm does the same thing, followed in the footsteps. And our family is a great believer in charity, so we get along well together. The Premier's already said it, there's two great cities, Rome and Campbelltown. If you ever went against John on that, he'd really get upset, you know. I mean, he really believed in it. And I sat down today, you wouldn't believe there's a bottle of Blue Label Scotch whisky on the table. Has everyone else got that? Because that was John's favourite drink. And this is a fair bit about John. I'd go overseas and John would say, bring the bottle of Blue Label back, will you? You know, I'll pay you when you get back. Imagine me getting paid for it. But I always brought him a bottle of Blue Label back. And it's, you know, we talk about his funeral and that, and I remember speaking that. And he got buried with a bottle of Blue Label. I don't know if there was anything in it, but it was a box of Blue Label, you know. And I got to say, and it's sad to say some things like this, but when he passed away, the family gave me a portrait of him. They gave me his AM badge, And they gave me his book and a bottle of Blue Label in a frame, and I thought it was fantastic. So, you know, that's how long the family goes back with our family, you know. My brother and our wives and all that, we really appreciate what happened with how they treated us. Let's talk about a court case. You know, we get a lot of good things happen in families and in firms and whatnot, but John got accused of certain things, and I defended, and our family defended John a fair bit. So we had a court case, and we all know what that was. I gave evidence of that, but before I gave evidence, John came up to said he's got no money to defend this. So my brother, Ron, and myself, we said, oh, we'll help you. You know, we'll fund it. And I said, no. Okay, I'll get the money, but I've got to give you collateral. So as you know, John had a lot of paintings, and of course they were weird. But he said, I'm going to give you all them paintings there as collateral. And I had to sign the papers and everything. It was just all done legally. We were just going to try and help a friend, you know, but no. This is Marsden, everything's got to be done properly. So I went to the court case, and it was my turn to do evidence. So we're going on this. I've never been in such a long story. Anyway, come up there, and the bloke said, I don't know what the word was. Oh, he said, is John promiscuous? I said, what the heck are you talking about? He said, I don't know what you mean. What's the word mean anyway? I've never heard of it in my life. Well, the whole courtroom broke up. So anyway, that was all right. Then he asked me a question some other way, and he still meant the same thing. I said, what the bloody, you think I'm stupid? You asked me that bloody 5 minutes ago. You know, I told you, I don't know what the word means. I don't care, I'm not interested. That's his business, not mine. So we all broke up, and it was a funny thing, but the judge believed me that I actually didn't know what it meant, and I felt that helped the court case. I'm having fun here, so, you know, I hope you are. And the court case was really hard. And John, you know, it was once something like that. I've been through the cancer thing and all that, and it knocks you around and kind of feel this at the end. But he went down, really, court case hit him. And I come there one day and I said, John, something's wrong with you, you know. You've got a big stomach, you know, you should go and see a doctor. And I've got to tell this story because it is about John growing up in this firm. And he rang me and said, you were right, I've got cancer. And so that was a very sad time. And we went and I used to go every Saturday morning have coffee. John would drive into Campbelltown. It's a true story. Every morning he'd go into Campbelltown, get a custard tart and come back, we cut it in half and have a half a custard tart. And if you believe in that, I still do with the gym now, every now and then, probably every couple of weeks. Still go to coffees and do it. So it's a tradition where we've been around. I hope you're not hungry, but I've still got a bit to go. After John then passed, it was pretty sad, but, you know, who takes over? Well, I've got to tell you, Jim, he took over unbelievable, you know, and our family is very dedicated to Jim. And Jim was a bit easy to deal with because he had someone to fall back. He had Marion. And it's very good to go home sometimes and just say, well, you know, this has happened, all this happened, and I know what she's like, she's very good. John didn't have that, so that was pretty sad because he was a workaholic. Jim started a workaholic, and he realised that, he needed more people, and that's why they've got so many people. I mean, Marsden Groups now spans 5 offices. I thought it was 140 staff, but I heard it's 160 staff, so it's excellent. Our main lawyers we dealt with is not only Jim, John Adam Seaton. Everyone knows Adam Seaton is one of the best lawyers that we've had. I mean, fought a court case with the federal government over compensation that we won, but that was probably John Marsden's one of the best feeling he ever had to win that. I just forgot to say, John did win his court case too, but it was too late for him, because he didn't survive to actually get the benefits. So we've got Adam Seaton, Grant Butterfield, Peter Critton, Justin Thornton and David Bear. That's the ones mainly we did with. But Jim is the leader of the Mars groups, to have coffee with him and to go reflect back on many times what we had with, and we do talk about John, still talk about him. It's incredible what we still do. Jim received the Order of Australia medal. Why John has done an enormous amount of work for the community, and it's very important to us that he does that, because, if you don't give back, and we've grown up with the Marsdens, we started with nothing, John started with nothing, and they got really big now, and we keep getting bigger, and I don't know why we do it, but we just, my father used to say, if you don't grow, you're going to die. So we keep thinking about that, so we keep growing. One day we're going to stop that anyway, it just keeps happening. I'll finish off with a very important word. We wouldn't be where we are today without the Marsdens and the friendship they've shown us. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Tony. I think you can all gather that the Marsdens and the Perishes have a close relationship. But Tony's not an easy marker, and certainly John was not the natural fit for Tony, but you can see the relationship and the friendship that existed. Tony started off a client. John built a relationship. Jim's continued it. In business, there is no doubt that the number one word is relationships. If you can build a relationship with your staff, with your clients, with government, then you can be successful. So thanks very much, Tony. That was fantastic. That's the end of tranche number 2. Have your main course, and we'll be back later. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Gail Connolly. My first exposure to Marsdens was in 1988 when I was a baby planner working at Campbelltown Council, and Marsden sent in this incredibly tall, baby-faced and good-looking lawyer called Adam Seaton. And I remember thinking at the time, wow, Marsdens have got it all. They've got the talent, the looks and the charm. And then I met John, and then I met Jim. So all I can say is it's a good thing that those guys are talented, because they certainly spent their time sending in the best looker at the first meeting to meet me. Since 1988, I've had a lot of dealings with Marsdens. I've worked in 6 or 7 councils in Queensland and New South Wales. And no matter where I've worked, I've always been able to rely on Marsdens for advice, especially in the planning law area with Adam. And more recently, and most recently in my role at Georges River Council, Adam was the first person I went to when I needed a chair for my local planning panel. Marsdens are always there, they're reliable, they provide good quality advice, and any time of the day or night, you can ring them if you've got an urgent inquiry, and they'll always follow it up and do the best for you. So congratulations, Jim, John, Adam, and all of the rest of the senior partners, the partners and the associates. Well done on reaching your 50 years. It's a shame John's not here to see it, but I know he's looking up from above and saying, well done, Jim, and all of you guys. I just wish you'd continue the 7 a.m. Monday morning meetings. So best wishes to you and congratulations.
25 years ago, as I said, John Fay spoke at our 25th anniversary, and although he was the Premier of the time, he was a little bit more than that from Marsden's point of view. John's association with Marsdens dated back to the 70s. In fact, he was a clerk studying law when he first joined Marsdens. He opened our Camden office. In those days, you could do that as a clerk. He wasn't even admitted. Soon after, he was admitted as a lawyer and he ran the Camden office. But shortly thereafter, he took over the Camden office and took it away from the Marsden Group and joined forces with Ken Searle, and they created John Fay, Searle & Co. 1986, John went into politics and therefore could not continue running the Camden office in the same way he did. So we amalgamated with John Fay, Searle & Co. And that's when Ken came on board. John came on board, but spent most of his time in politics. His political career obviously grew. We're all aware of Premier of New South Wales and Finance Minister of Australia. John was desperately keen to talk tonight. However, he couldn't be here because his grandson Cameron is graduating today. And he has brought Cameron up for all his life, or most of his life, so he couldn't miss that. We all understood. He asked, though, could he please prepare a video? And I'd like to pass over to John Fay.
Good evening. I regret that neither Colleen nor I can be with you this evening to celebrate what is a wonderful occasion. And in fact, an extraordinary story. I congratulate you, I congratulate the partners, the solicitors, the support staff on achieving 50 years as basically the same practice, certainly bigger as the years have gone on, but the same practice, the same towns, and in many cases, the same clients. When I reflect on legal firms in Australia, I can't recall a firm that has been as constant as Marsdens has been. If you look at many of the solicitors, many of the partners, they found a home, they liked it. Obviously, the work culture and the workmates encouraged them to stay. They took roots and they have continued to deliver services across the entire field of law all of these years. I can recall the early days when I started with the firm in 1971. In those days, John, the outspoken and sometimes outlandish partner, sole practitioner, was operating out of a small office behind Wallaby's Bakery in Queen Street, Campbelltown. I think there was John and there was one support staff member, and that was the practice. John encouraged me to join the practice and offered to open an office in Camden, and that happened, and I became a managing clerk in that office at that time. I have to say, when John first approached us, my wife was almost petrified with the man that I was about to go and work for. He came to our home, and I don't think she had ever heard language of the nature that John was capable of delivering. She's probably heard a lot of it since, but not at that time. We overcame that initial bump, and I must say that the time that I was with John, I came to respect both his ability as a lawyer, reflect on the fact that he recognised that people out there needed help, and he was willing to fight for them and willing to give it his best shot every day on any type of case. I helped get Jim to the practice. I won't say I was solely responsible, but I certainly encouraged him. Again, John wanting me to do that, saying that his little brother wouldn't listen to him. And as I look back over the years, that was probably the reason why the practice has gone 50 years and why it has progressed and grown to the level that it has. For all of the outspoken nature that John had, Jim was always solid, reliable, and he was effective in the manner in which he dealt with people. He didn't get offside with people and still doesn't. And he has respect for all of his clients and respect for people generally. And I think the Marsden attitude was always to become part of the community. Jim's done that through chambers of commerce, football teams, through art galleries. John always did that in various ways, including contribution to the Law Society, both regionally and as the New South Wales president. But first and foremost, the ethos of the practice was that front and centre were the firm's clients. Those clients are still coming back time after time, and undoubtedly will continue to do so. The law services have been reliable, they have been local, they have been relevant to what the client's needs were, and at times I know when the client couldn't afford it, the practice continued to work notwithstanding. That, I think, is why, at particularly a community level, the practice has been so successful in its various offices over such a long period of time. The other aspect which I believe is worthy of mention is the continuity of personnel in the practice. Young solicitors who were given a start, stayed on, went through the ranks, became partners. That again says that it's a good place to work, it's delivering a good service, and I get personal satisfaction out of what I do in practicing the law. And a lot of places cannot achieve that. A lot of places went out, a lot of practices and firms went out because they couldn't deliver that type of service. So I hope tonight is one of joy, one of no doubt nostalgic reflection as you go back over many of the funny things, and I can recall a few of them. With limited time, I'm not going to mention them here now. I just hope that you thoroughly enjoy what you are sharing this evening, and I wish each of you every success, good health, and personal satisfaction in delivering the service of law to a very large community, particularly in the western suburbs of Sydney. Again, I'm sorry I can't be with you. Thank you.
And John is sincerely sorry he couldn't be here, because in this room are hundreds of friends of his as well.
My name's Mark Scarce from Camden Hire, and we've been dealing with Marsdens since the early 80s. My family actually used Ken Searle to buy their first home back in the late 70s. We've had a fantastic relationship over many, many years now, with Marsdens using our service at Camden Hire, and likewise us using their services for many different legal matters that we've had over the years. The best thing I think I find about Marsdens is that they're just a great team to deal with, very professional. The guys give back to the community, and we've just developed such good relationships with so many people within the organisation.
The last speech of the night, ladies and gentlemen. I don't often say this, but this has been an extremely hard night for Jim. I've had the microphone in the audience, and that has not been easy. But more importantly, he's had to be drinking light beer all night. So he is filthy. He thought we could have got him on about an hour ago, but everyone was having a good time talking, so I said, no, let's leave it. Look, John died in 2006. Although he had cancer, he was in remission. He wasn't expected to die. He took a plane trip to Turkey, caught pneumonia and didn't come back. There was no handover to Jim as senior partner. At that time, a lot of people predicted a not so rosy future for Marsdens, that we've lost our leader. What are you going to do? At the time, a couple of clients rang up and asked for their files. When asked why, they said we assumed you're going to be shutting the doors. So Jim was thrust into the role of senior partner. The first thing we had to do was to glue the firm together, to make it clear that John was a very dominant leader, to make sure that the leadership of the practice was going to continue. He did that pretty easily. He got the support of the partners and the professional staff and the support staff. But it wasn't so easy with the rest of the client base, the referral base, the political relationships, because they were largely held by John in his hands. And Jim had to work hard to gain the trust of all those people. And he did that diligently, but really easily. He just stepped into the role of senior partner, stepped into John's shoes, and he's led this firm fantastically for the last 12.5 years. Since Jim's stewardship began, we have doubled in size in 12 years. So undoubtedly, Jim has a lot of talent. The Premier, of course, made one glaring mistake, saying that Jim didn't have an ego. We all know that's far from the truth. But what occurs now is this is the end of me for the night, because once Jim got the microphone in front of him, I was not getting it back. So he'll be conducting the rest of the evening. But I'm just going to remind him of advice I got once from a person I respect greatly. And I'll just read that piece of advice. You know how you go on and on at partners' meetings. Well, I don't want you to do that tonight. The night isn't about you, it's about the firm. So please keep it short, as brief as possible, please. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen.
Thank you very much, Adam. And it is in my control now, so I'll be as brief as I want to be or as long as I want to be. But at least one thing, Adam, you used to be well known as a footballer for your timing. You're not real good at it tonight. You've lost that touch. Sorry, mate. Tony Perich decided not to welcome all the dignitaries and just refer to the Premier. You all know who you are. I think it's wonderful that you're all here, and I'm very, very pleased that you could make it and you could take the time out of very, very busy schedules to do it. However, I've got to say one thing about Marise Payne, the Foreign Minister coming. She did fly in from Beijing. The plane was a little late. She still got here within a reasonable time. We know the reality is, though, we know that she's always been a good friend of Marsden's for many, many years, and I appreciate that, Marise. I appreciate it very much. But I also know that this is the first opportunity you've had to have dinner with your husband in the last 6 months. So Stuart and Marise, enjoy your dinner. But thank you both for coming. I also want to make... Nobody's really mentioned the mayors. We've got a couple of mayors here, Judy Hannon and who's the other mayor here? There was Wendy Waller and Mayor of Campbelltown, Bratisovich. Thank you for coming. And the exes, there is Michael Knight. No longer an ex, he's forgotten about it now. Craig Knowles didn't like being an ex, so he took that job in New Zealand, and now they call him His Excellency. I think that's the right term, is it, Craig? No, you don't like it. Being a Labor man, I know you don't, that kind of thing doesn't fit. Okay, 1968. I was going to talk about what was happening in the world. We don't have time. Everybody else is taking too much time. But I can tell you in Campbelltown, in 1968, there was no Campbelltown Catholic Club, although it was under construction, I've got to say. There were no electric trains in Campbelltown. Campbelltown wasn't a city. High-rise was never thought of in Campbelltown. Lax Hotel, my birthplace, still existed. I had just finished, at this time of the year, my HSC. Campbelltown at the time was being invaded by boat people. Absolutely invaded by boat people from England. Some of them had the privilege of being 10-pound ponds, and I've got a couple of mates here that were those, and they caught planes. But those boat people at the time, they invaded us, took over Sherwood Hills. or named it Sherwood Hills, a development done by Lend-Lease. And then, a little bit later in the year, John Marsden decided to open his practice. Now, I've got to tell you something about that, just a little anecdote about it. John opened his practice, and one of the first jobs that he got was instructed by the president of the Australian Hotels Association, who happened to be my father, Guy Marsden, to oppose the granting of the licence to this club under construction, the Catholic Club. So that didn't start for a very good relation with John, who studied for the priesthood, John and the Catholic community. But nevertheless, that repaired after about 40 years or so, or just before he died. But still, no, it wasn't quite that bad. But the irony of all that was, whilst John was opposing the licence, I was working for a builder as a builder's labourer, and my job was to help build the Catholic Club. So John opened his practice, and that was the start of what John was eventually going to say and become history. Two great cities in the world, Rome and Campbelltown. And John and I and all of my family have always loved Campbelltown. So after 50 years of practice, I think that I would be entitled to spend the next 15 to 20 minutes bragging about Marsden's success and the contributions that everybody's made to it. After all, in those 50 years, we've had half a dozen recessions, a global financial crisis, a partner attacked publicly and horrendously, a senior partner attacked publicly and horrendously as a pedophile on national TV, a court case that followed that. We've had a half a dozen state governments, a dozen or so prime ministers, most of them in the last couple of weeks. And we're still here. Not only are we still here, but we've had year-on-year growth, with the exception of 3 years of that 50 years, year-on-year growth in 50 years. So I think that if I wanted to, I'd be entitled to brag. But I'm not going to. The reasons I'm not going to is that whilst a lot of people have stood up here and given credit to me and to John, to Addo, to the other partners, the reality is that there are many, many people in this community that have contributed to Marsden's success. And so instead of bragging, I'm going to take the opportunity to say a few thank yous, to show and express a little bit of gratitude. First people that I want to thank, and not many of you would know them. In fact, in saying not many would know those people, can you believe that there are less than half of our staff that actually knew John? But the first people I want to thank are Tim and Guy Marsden, my mum and dad. They were the proprietors of Lax Hotel on the corner of Queen and Railway Street, Campbelltown, 600 metres from where our office started and where our office still practices, our Campbelltown office. I want to thank them because they're the ones that instilled in John and I some of the principles that have made our practice successful. Mum and Dad were hard workers from dawn till, not till dusk, from dawn until closing time at 10 o'clock, and then after 10 o'clock till 11 o'clock with a bit of clean up, and 12 o'clock. And up they get in the morning again, do it all again. They were always involved in their community. Not many people know it, some do, but Mum started the first preschool kindergarten in Campbelltown because there was a need there. Dad was a member of the Chamber of Commerce, a number of service clubs, and went on to be a councillor at Campbelltown Council. They also looked after their customers. To both of them, Addo spoke about service, and the client comes first. To both of them, the customer and the service of the customer was the primary objective. Secondary one, but it was still important, was to serve good beer, and they did that too. They also looked after the needy of the town. I remember there was a guy called Denny Clark. He was what's called, in those days, it was called a swaggie. It wasn't a swaggie, he was just a homeless person in Campbelltown. And he used to get fed from time to time by Mum and Dad. He used to come in and people would buy him a beer, Mum and Dad would shout him a beer. One night, he was in particularly distressed state. Mum came up to me and said, "Where's your sleeping bag, Jim?" And so I gave it to her. She got my sleeping bag, gave it to Denny Clark. He went down the back, found a warm spot, but unfortunately, he died there. At least, because of Mum, he died warm. That's the kind of attitude that Mum and Dad instilled in John and I. So thanks to Tim and Guy Marsden. Moving on from there, and still on the line of family, of course I've got to talk about John. There's been a lot said about John. Tony's spoken about John, Addo's spoken about John, and Premier's spoken about John. Tony, what you didn't mention, you said that you agreed on a lot of things and disagreed on a lot of things, and you gave a few little anecdotes. One of the anecdotes you didn't talk about, and I thought this was rather humorous, everybody that knew John knew that John thought that there was a couple, besides two great cities in the world, there was a couple of great recreations. One of them was Blue Label Scotch whisky that Tony referred to, but one that Tony didn't like to refer to was cannabis. He loved smoking dope and did it all his life. Now, Tony was a great defender of John, and then one night at Tony's Rotary Club, a few people were attacking John because John, conservative people, because John was famed for smoking cannabis. And Tony got up, he bullshitted. John was still smoking, but Tony got up and stood up and said, no, he used to do that, but he's given that up. That's silly stuff. That's absolutely ridiculous. And then the very next day, on the front page of the local paper, was John espousing the values of cannabis when you're undergoing cancer treatment. Tony came over to the office absolutely distressed, but John stuck by his principles. John did the very early hard yards for our firm. He's the one that set the foundations, and they were unshakable foundations. I've said that many times, but when you reflect on it, not only did he set the foundations, and I know Addo spoke of my last 12 and a half years as leader, he also was significant in setting the framework as well, to give us a position, the impetus to become what I believe is one of the most successful practices outside the major cities, the capital cities of Australia. He did the hard yards early. He was a gay man in what was then an extremely intolerant society. He was a leader. He wanted change. He wanted to change people's attitudes. Michael Kirby, in his eulogy for John at his funeral, called him a change agent. And John certainly was a change agent. To see John back in those days unable to come out because it was unacceptable, and to now think that probably because of a lot of the things that he did back in those early days, we had a vote on equality of marriage last year that was overwhelmingly accepted. I think that John should have got some credit as a change agent for that particular change. But he wasn't just all about being... Thank you, Bruce. It wasn't all about being in the rest of, or the broader community. He never forgot his local community. Remember Roman Campbelltown, involved in the local swimming club, Kangaroos football club, Country Rugby League, New South Wales Rugby League, patron of the arts, chair of the Campbelltown Arts Centre, along with Meg Oates, who's here tonight. Welcome and glad you're here, Meg. A leader of the profession and rising to become president of the Law Society, and a term as president of the Australian Law Council. I made some reference to Michael Kirby's speech a moment ago, but John fought all of his life for a change, and he always found it difficult within himself to accept his own homosexuality. It was only in his last years that he was able to accept it fully. Not a lot of people understood that. My sister Sally's here tonight. I think she would have understood that, and probably my kids might have as well. It was a tough time, and yet during that tough time, John was still able to give unbelievably 100% to the practice that he established. John had a personality that certainly grated on some people. He had many arguments on many subjects. He would not take a backward step if he thought he was right. In fact, he would rarely take a backward step if he thought he was wrong. He'd never like to admit that he was wrong. He made some enemies, but he made a lot of friends. If you had John against you, beware. But if you had him on your side, you could be assured that you're on a winner, and he would never back down. As I said, John was a gay man in a very intolerant society. It would have been easy for him to sit back, do his work. stay in a hole, make a few quid and enjoy his life. But it wasn't his nature. He gave his all, he gave his life to the practice, and he gave his life to the community. Without John, none of us, including myself, would be standing here today. I also want to make reference and thank, in case you didn't get it, that was my expression of gratitude to my brother. I also want to make reference to past employees and partners. I don't know what the figures are exactly, but as a guesstimate, we've probably given jobs over the 50 years to at least 3,000 people. Another guesstimate is that we have given a start to several hundred young lawyers, some of whom have gone on to really, really good things. To these people, I say thank you. I don't want you to thank me. I say thank you to the contribution you've given us. To our former partners, I say thank you. The late Ken Searle, a good mate to us all, a good lawyer and a pillar of Camden society. We miss him greatly. I'm glad that 3 of his kids are here tonight with their partners, and thanks, I think Tim, Matt and Gemma are here and your partners. Thank you very much for coming. To Drew Percival here tonight, welcome Drew again, and thank you for your 35 years. Somebody said to me the other day, and it wasn't you Drew, but your father Greg, Mayor of Campbelltown on a number of occasions, was John's first client. Not sure whether that's right. I think it was Deirdre Darcy that might have said that to me. Not sure whether it's right, but it's not a bad story and we'll stick with it. Had I mentioned a former partner that left us many, many years ago tonight, Rod Smith. I wanted to invite Rod tonight for 2 reasons. One, because the firm at one stage was actually called Marsden, Smith and Associates. And secondly, because had it not been for Rod and John Fay, and John Fay made reference to it briefly, I wouldn't be here. You see, I started my career in Wollongong. I was going sensational, at least I thought I was, and so did the firm I was with. I'd moved down there, loved it. I was engaged to Marion. She loved it down in Wollongong. Had some great mates there in a very short period of time. And apparently John wanted me to join him. But as somebody said, he was too proud to ask his little brother to come and join him. So he sent his boys, and they were boys at that stage in their early 20s, John Fay and Rod Smith. The long story short is, it'd be nice to say that I just realised that the best thing in the world to do would be to go and join with my brother. But the reality was that I was on really good money in Wollongong. They offered me 50% more, then they offered me double, then they offered me 110%, and then they threw in a car, and then I put one condition on it, and that was that I never work under the same roof as John. They gave me that condition, and I took the job. It was fantastic. But I've got to say, having done that, it was the best business decision and personal decision that I've ever made. Business decision for obvious reasons, personal decision because John and I were never great mates, but our relationship of brothers was enhanced by that decision. I've also got to talk about our present employees. We at Marsdens are very proud of the fact that we have some of our staff have been with us for 30, 35 years and more years. One of our staff is no longer with us, is my former secretary, sitting down here, Rosie Olsen. Rosie, I think you were with us for 35 or so. I know that all of your family were born and raised during your time of work with us, as was mine. Kim Warner is here tonight too. She was John's secretary at one stage. And to be John's secretary and survive and still be there is amazing. And there are 2 of those. One is Kim, one is Lynn Kirk. And Lynn Kirk, believe it or not, was my secretary when I first started 45 years ago. Now, she hasn't been here all that time, but she's been gone, come back, and she's still here now. She's David Baird's secretary now. Leanne Bonamini, Jeanette Pearce, and others. And also Kim Mackey. Those of you that deal with us now know how important it is, the front desk is. Kim Mackey is our receptionist. And Kim Mackey is as important to me as John Adam is to me. She's the face of the practice for the people coming to the front door. And Kim, you're doing the best job you've done for the last 23 years. Thank you to all of you guys. To the smart young lawyers that we now employ, thank you for your contribution. Western Sydney University, Wollongong University, and to a much lesser extent the Sandstone universities are now providing very high quality graduates. But the most important thing is we're looking for people that are local. Doesn't matter which university they come from, we're looking for the local ones. And the reason we're looking for the local ones is because they're grounded. They understand life. They don't come out of the university with their degree and ready to hang up a shingle and adopt an elitist way of life. They've come from Campbelltown and surrounding areas, and they know about our society and they know what our society needs. Some of them are still with us, some of them move on. But I can tell you that they are worthy of praise too, and my gratitude goes out to all of those young people, past and present, more particularly the present because you're more important to me, past and present, that have been here and served with Marsdens. You know something, we've established 50 years ago, but only sort of defined it about 15 years ago, some core values. And those values are integrity, excellence, trust, and community. And we look amongst those young lawyers that are coming through for the ones that are showing those values. And when we start recognising those, that's when we start to see a future associate, senior associate, and future partner. But for those that don't go on to that, I say thank you to you as well. And I hope that you take some of those values that you learned at Marsdens onto your further careers. My partners, I don't think my partners have been mentioned enough tonight. I'm very proud of our partnership. Think about a bunch of lawyers and think about trying to get them to work collaboratively and cohesively. They all have their own ideas, they all have their egos, with the exception of me. They all have their egos and they all think that what they do is best, and how they do it and how they want you to do it is the best way to do it. But this team of 14 that we've got at the moment are actually collaborative and cohesive. Not all the time, and they disagree and they have differences of opinion, but when it comes down to the crunch, they're collaborative, cohesive, and they work together. For the practice to succeed, you need that, and these guys have done it. So you guys that haven't been mentioned, I'm going to mention you, and at the risk of boring people, Adam Seaton and David Baird in local government, land environment, Grant Butterfield, I thank God you're still with us, Grant Butterfield and Aaron Johnson in litigation. I know you call it something else, but to me it's litigation. Peter Crittenden and Ben Wong in property. They've done the most property work, believe this or not believe it, they've done the most property work in New South Wales, registrations and settlements, 3 out of the 4 quarters in the last 12 months in the whole of New South Wales, second in Australia, and we don't have an office outside of New South Wales. Tom Reeve and Naveen Youssef in family law, Joe Benura in personal injury, Justin Thornton and Rahul Luckman in commercial law, and Dominic Mosca, who we brought back to the firm to run our Liverpool offices. Partners, thank you for your cooperation over the years. Now, I wasn't going to mention John Adam, but he was actually nice to me as he was introducing me, so I suppose I've got to say something about you, Adam. Now, we don't always agree on the direction of the firm. When we don't agree, though, we're happy to talk about it and find the line that we want to take. We work exceptionally well together and have done for probably the last 20, 25 years, but certainly the last 15 years when John first became ill. Since you took over the role as managing partner, we've improved and we continue to improve the bottom line at all times, all the time. You set standards that we never thought possible. Sure, we contribute to achieve them, but if you didn't recognise that we could achieve them and then set them, it simply wouldn't have happened. Your financial knowledge, combined with your understanding of how legal practice works, but more particularly how lawyers work, is what it's all about. I don't think that we would have achieved the results that we've achieved over the years. I don't say this very often. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you for everyone in the partnership. I mentioned our local government practice, and I can't let that go without talking a little bit about council work. Council work is sitting over there in the department run by Adam and David called Local Government and Land Environment, but it feeds all of our other areas of work too. So whilst we started and still maintain mums and dads work, council work has been vitally important to us. So I want to say thank you to the 55 or 60 councillors, whatever we have now, on our books, who are our clients. I also want to say thank you to the councillors all over the state who have supported us for 50 years. Well, not quite 50 years, because we got our first council 40 years ago, and that was Campbelltown Council. And a big thank you, George and Lindy, who represent all the previous mayors and general managers. Thank you very much for your support over the years. And all those mayors, general managers, staff and councillors, thank you for your support for the last 40 years. I mentioned that John ran for Parliament. It's been mentioned a couple of times, and it's been suggested that that has put us in line to maybe establish good government relations. And we do have good government relationships and good political relationships and opposition relationships, as evidenced by the people that are here tonight. And that's great. And it's a credit to John, a credit to me, a credit to whoever else involved. But the credit and the gratitude goes to you people over the years that have been involved with Marsdens. Thank you to the two former politicians that I've mentioned already, Michael Knight and Craig Knowles. My gratitude also goes to all of the local members over the years, but in particular our current local members, Annalise Chantavong, Greg Warren, Chris Hayes, Anne Stanley and Chris Patterson, the outgoing member for Camden and Government Whip. A thank you to all of you gentlemen, but a particular thank you to you, Pato, and best wishes to you, Pato, for your assistance and friendship over the last 8 years. My partners and I wish you well on your ill-advised, misguided and stupid retirement from Parliament. I hope it goes well. We have staff recognition days where we acknowledge the contribution of staff who've been with us 5, 10, 15, 20, 30 years, whatever it is. I always make reference to the fact that Marsdens Law Group is a big family, and we are a big family. So I want to say thank you to families, and there's going to be a few families that I mentioned. When I thought about it, I thought about families that have been clients for many years. And I went through my brain and it all turned over a little bit, and I thought, it's amazing. We've had families for 4 generations almost in one of them, 3 in a couple, and 2 generations in another 15 or 16. And again, I'm going to indulge myself and mention those families. The Perridge family, 3 generations, heading to 4 generations. The Vitocco family, who came on years after the Perridge family, but is now 3 generations of the Vitocco family. The Cornish family, none of whom could be here tonight. Both John and Pam are quite ill and both in hospital. The Lepresti family, the Teagles, the Scarces, the Darcys, not a big family, but Deirdre and Everett are over there. Thanks for coming, guys. The Wakelings, the Clintons, the Lawrences, Cordovalis, the Participage family from Appin Road, not you, George, the Fordhams, Terry and Di Goldacre and their family, the Kellys, the Logues, Peter Brennan and Michael Lynch. I don't think we're going to get many generations out of you and Michael and Peter, but you're still a family. The Holloway family, the Ingham family, the Tulich family, the Dunbiers, another 3-generation family, first with Max and now all of the boys who are here tonight. The Abrahams, a recent family, and Darren's here tonight. Thank you for coming, Darren. And the Warbies. Not only are these families have grown with Marsdens, but there are many other individuals out there, some of whom are here tonight. And to all of you, families and individuals that have been with us for so long, again, I say thank you. I made special mention of the Perridge family, and I'll do so again. The reason that I do so is not just because that they are our largest private client, but they've actually been with us longer than any other family. As Tony said, it's now 49 years. They've grown from the poor simple farmers to the massive and complex enterprise that now exists. But as you've seen from the way Tony spoke today, they are still friends. They're clients, yes, but they're friends. And they operate from the heart. And it's not just Tony. Tony represented extremely well his whole family. So a special thank you to the Perridge family. Tony, Kathy, Ron, Lynn, the next generation, Columbo, the first generation, and the next generations to come. I'm going to say thank you again to Tib and Guy Marsden family. My three sisters, Louise, Jane and Sally, represented here tonight by Sally, and my late brother Peter. They've always been supportive of both me and John. But I can tell you that during John's horrendously public trial, without their support, I don't think that I or John could have got through it. Thanks Sal, thanks Jane, thanks Louise, and thank you Peter. To my wife Marion, get a little bit emotional sometimes. I probably shouldn't have had that last glass of wine. To my wife Marion, my kids, Carla, James, Nick and Layla. The ultimate debt of gratitude goes to you guys. From the time I started with John in 1973, Marion, who wasn't keen on me joining John in the first instance, was nevertheless 100% behind me at all times. Sometimes I didn't think so, but in hindsight when I look at it, she was. John and I were both very hard workers. We committed ourselves to the practice. In my case, I did so quite often, very often, at the expense of Marion and my 4 kids. I probably didn't realise it then, but I certainly realise it now when I see you guys building your families. And I realise that you made a great sacrifice in supporting me in every respect during that period. I'm only starting to really understand it now as I spend more time with my grandchildren than I probably did with my kids. To you, Marion, Carla, James, Nick, Layla, thank you. Thank you for being there all the time. Much has been said over the years of Marsden's contribution to the community. Yeah, it is true that we've given a lot to our local community. Firstly, Campbelltown, then as it grew, Macarthur. As it continued to grow, southwest Sydney. In doing what we've done for the community, we never have thought that we were doing anything unusual or anything special. Probably thanks to my mum and dad and their attitude, but that goes for all of my partners as well. We just did what we believed we should be doing. We, as lawyers in the community, are in a privileged position. We've had the privilege of going to university and getting a degree. In my view, and the view of all of my partners, that privileged position gives us an obligation to give back to the community. However, I've got to say that my biggest thank you, my biggest expression of gratitude goes out to that community. Whilst we give, that community gives more, gives back to us, to the community, to all of our clients over the past 50 years, and to all of you here. Thank you, and thank you for allowing us to be part of the community for the last 50 years. Not quite finished. I could have spent the time bragging about Marsden's accomplishments. However, I felt it was much more important in celebrating our 50 years that I expressed my gratitude to all of the people and organisations that I've mentioned. I conclude by repeating my thank you to every single one of you here and not here. And thank you to future generations that hopefully will support us again. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you. Addo should be up here now because he's the MC, but he said hand it over to me, give me a microphone, won't let it go, not going to let it go. When my brother John turned 50 in 1989, I think it was, By then he was out and proud. It was great. He had a birthday party, a lavish birthday party. He had the then Premier Nick Grinder at the party, lots of other people. He had his sister Claudia, his first teacher at primary school there. And his theme was that he did everything his way. And he played as the crescendo of the party, Frank Sinatra's My Way. We've got a young entertainer tonight, a local young man that I'm sure John would be proud of. We certainly are. And with a few changes to Frank Sinatra's My Way, with the help of master lyricist John Adam, Alfie Akuri is going to sing another version. I'm not going to come back up here after this, so I'll tell you that once Alfie has finished what I think we're calling Our Way or something of that nature, he's going to go on to another song which we think represents what the future of Marsdens is going to be. So over to you, Alfie Akuri. Thank you very much.
happy 50th birthday. It's a pleasure to be here tonight. It's 10 o'clock, so I'm thinking you've all had a few drinks. This next song you'll know, so sing along. Listen, baby, ain't no mountain high, ain't no valley low, ain't no river wide enough, baby. If you need me, call me, no matter where you are, no matter how far. Don't worry, baby, just call my name, I'll be there in a hurry. You don't have to worry, 'cause baby, there ain't no mountain high enough, ain't no valley low enough, ain't no river wide enough to keep me from getting to you, babe. Remember the day I set you free? I told you you could always count on me, darling. From that day on, I made a vow. I said, don't you worry, some way, somehow. 'Cause baby, there ain't no mountain high enough, ain't no valley low enough, ain't no river wide enough to keep me from getting to you, babe. 'Cause baby, there ain't no mountain high enough, ain't no valley low enough, ain't no river wide enough to keep me from getting to you, babe. If you need me, call me, no matter where you are, no matter how far. Don't worry, baby, just call my name, I'll be there in a hurry. You don't have to worry, 'cause baby, there ain't no mountain high enough, ain't no valley low enough, ain't no river wide enough to keep me from getting to you, babe. 'Cause baby, there ain't no mountain high enough, ain't no valley low enough, ain't no river wide enough to keep me from getting to you, babe. Thank you. Thank you so much for having me. It's an absolute pleasure. Thank you.